Hello everyone and welcome to Corey Loses, where today we're starting a new Thrawn's Revenge Imperial Civil War 2.2 preview playthrough. For those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. I am Corey. In addition to doing this YouTube channel, I am also the lead developer for Thrawn's Revenge, so when I do these playthroughs, I tend to talk about it more from a design perspective or a development perspective. So talking a bit about what we've done for the mod, what we plan to do for this build, what's left to do before release, and sort of like broader ideas that we want to work on in the future. So for those of you who have seen the Art of War playthrough that we did as the Pentastar alignment, I put up a poll in the middle of that asking who you guys wanted to see next, and the New Republic and Imperial Remnant were pretty close to tied from that. And then when I did the poll on Patreon for which GC we should play next, or which Galactic Conquest we should play next, the Thrawn campaign and Empire's End were pretty much tied as well, or were 100% tied actually. So what we're going to be doing is the Thrawn campaign as the New Republic for this one, and then in about 3.5 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, around there, we're going to be starting an Empire's End playthrough as the Imperial Remnant. And that way we'll have a bit more time to get some of the Empire's End features done. Then I can show off some of the era change stuff that we weren't able to talk about in the Pentastar alignment one because it was still in development and there was that bug that happened. So we'll see how long this one takes, but so the Thrawn campaign GC is one of the less changed ones between 2.15 and 2.2 in terms of what's actually in the campaign, or in the Galactic Conquest scenario. So it's still like the Katana mission. There's some slight differences to how that works, and there's a couple differences in the map, but for the most part we stuck with what it was, because we were pretty happy with what it was and how it represented everything. We'll probably make a few other changes to it in 2.3, but we didn't want to overwhelm ourselves with some of the minute changes that would have been needed for that, and give ourselves some more work to do in the future. But anyways, let's get started, and we're going to be playing on Admiral. Greetings, Commander. I am Mon Mothma, Chief of State of the New Republic. The Senate has appointed you as the head of our armed forces in the fight against Grand Admiral Thrawn. We have very little knowledge about him, however recent reports indicate he is a superb strategist. Many Bothans died to bring us this information. May the Force be with you. All right. So we'll just go over some of the more obvious changes here before we get too far into it and take a look at what the galactic situation is. So like I said, not a huge difference in terms of which planets are in the mod, or in this map, compared to the last build. There's a couple changes. And some planets have swapped positions a little bit, but for the most part, it should look fairly familiar. This is one of the only maps in the mod that is entirely SSD free, I think. But we have about 19 maps total in the mod and 8 playable factions, so there's a lot of different combinations of like different faction strengths and weaknesses. Operation Shadowhand and Thrawn campaign tends to be the more like even start between two factions. That's sort of the niche they fill. So as you can see here, we have a couple more planets. We have a little bit more in terms of military, but overall it's pretty equal. And a lot of that is just the difference between our starting fighters and them not having as many starting fighters, because a lot of our starting forces are fighters. But anyways, as you will see if you've either played the previous builds or were watching the previous playthroughs, the galactic map looks a bit different. So you no longer have the giant fluffy things that we had an issue with during the Pentastar alignment playthrough, which were huge, ugly, and distracting. Now they're more reasonably sized. We had to rescale the entire galactic map to do that, which is why I didn't do it before. But now that's all done, and I also went through and redid the background texture for the galactic map. It's kind of difficult getting something I'm happy with that, because you're putting one single texture across like 20 different screens worth of space. So you end up only looking at a small percentage of it the entire time. And I have some other ideas for ways that we can work on it in the future, but for now, I'm more happy with it than I was before, at least. I'm still not sure what controls the lighting settings for the map, because the texture is supposed to be fairly bright, especially in the core, and it's a lot dimmer and darker than it's intended to be. But anyways, the last thing I want to touch on before we get going here is this filter system. So some of you may have played other mods where there's a similar filter system present. The original filter system like that was developed by Pox, and I think that's probably the one that's present in most of the mods that you would have played it in. So Pox, at that time, he was working on a mod called Secret Weapons of the Empire, I believe. Now he is our main Lewis scripter. And the reason we'd never used the system before, even though he was the one that, or even though he made it, was because the old version of the system tended to use story events for its functionality, whereas this one uses a different method. So story events are what you use to lock and unlock units, spawn heroes, have other stuff happen during the campaign. And while you can sort of gimmick your way around making it work for a lot of the event types for factions beyond the Empire, New Republic, and Underworld, so in the mod Imperial Remnant, New Republic, and Empire of the Hand, those are the only factions that can load their own story scripts. So they're the only ones that you can like intentionally lock and unlock units like that. So Pox went through and made a new way to do that, that all the factions can use. And that's what we have right here. So these are all placeholder icons, by the way. A lot of the UI stuff is still stuff we want to work on. But I just did this so we weren't using the fast forward icon anymore. So you guys would have a better idea what was going on. But you have the construct frigates, fighters, and cruisers, construct capital ships, battleships, and dreadnoughts tab, and then the structures tab. So we have the Empress here. We're going to try to take a look at that in this. You know what? Let's get one. Oh, I don't want to waste that many credits yet. We'd have to move Mon Mothma over there for the discount. But let's get these. Oh, there we go. But anyways, also like our previous playthroughs, I am doing the same thing with the patron ship names. So if you look here, we have all these extra ones down here and down here. So these are all ships that are named after the patrons who basically make it possible for me to keep the lights on. So just as a thank you for their support of the channel, I offer them, like, there's a list of ships at different support tiers, and then they tell me what they want, and I name a ship after them for the playthrough. So this isn't stuff that's going to be there in the actual released version of the mod. It's just for the playthrough purposes on the channel. So if you're interested in joining our fleet during this playthrough or in any future playthroughs, feel free to, if you just want to check out the link in the description there. It lets you know what's available, all the tiers for it, and yeah, so I do that for every playthrough. You can add it on as we're like halfway through. But anyways, so just thanks everyone for their support that way. But let's get started here. I'm gonna queue up. I'm gonna grab a couple more. Grab Thermopylae and Rimnight Runner, two of our MC80s, and I'm just gonna make sure I put it on hard. I think I did. Game hard. Yes, perfect. All right, so what are we gonna do first? This is a pretty secure area for us, so let's start by moving some of these fleets up a little bit.
Roger that.
Because Corellia and Duro aren't super strong, but they aren't super weak either. Let's move it around here. Oh. Also, we will at some point during this playthrough hopefully be able to take a look at the boarding craft. So we have a boarding ability. Here's the boarding shuttle for it. Right now, the ability is still being fine-tuned a bit, and so we can't use it just yet. Hopefully it's something we'll be able to use a bit later in the playthrough, but
moving to destination.
I did post a video on how that worked on its own a little bit earlier in the year. Or I guess that would have been last year at this point. But we do have some of our forces down here. So a lot of people report this as a bug, but there was actually a long siege of Quakristak in canon, which is why we do it that way. But what I think we want to do is we'll start by sending this fleet off after Svivrin.
Coming around.
And then we can bring stuff together. Okay.
Mon Calamari cruiser ready.
And let's also go after Jomark. So we'll want to grab some of these less defended planets around here. But right, so this is actually a neutral planet. I think Bifash is as well. So we'll just go over that way. Yeah. It's definitely neutral. So we can just grab some of these unclaimed planets.
Imminent.
Located in the Outer Rim and largely covered by ocean, Jomark has a small agricultural colony on its single continent. For a time it was home to the Dark Jedi Joris Saboth, who set himself up to rule over the people. I've never been sure how to pronounce his last name.
What's on your mind?
Let's not get into that, Han.
Easier
How
than
long
the
have you
Kessel
got?
Run. Got it.
So most of the
Forces ahead.
Imperial forces tend to be concentrated up in the Pentastar alignment territory. And one of the things that I want to do, like I was saying earlier, to change this map is more accurately represent the different Imperial forces that contributed to Thrawn's Confederacy. Because it wasn't really just the Pentastar alignment, but the way we have the map set up right now makes it seem like it was all the PA. So that's something that I'm not super happy with, but let's send in Core and Star over here. And that text will get added. That's missing there. So we've got Spartan's Pride and Core and Star in on this. Mon Furious, may as well just take this stuff out. Thermopylae. 'Cause it's not a huge fleet that they have here,
Reinforcements en route.
obviously.
Ready to commence.
Got something you need moved?
Be careful.
Weapons charged.
They're
Hurry
falling
up,
back.
Jabba's
There we
waiting.
go.
Weapons operational.
That's got him.
Almost lost a ship in our first battle, or a hero in our first battle. That Lancer model is actually being redone at the moment by Sleverd, so I don't know if it'll be done in 2.2. Where, as far as art goes, there's very little that we're saying we need to be done in terms of like redone stuff. We still need to get the punishing one for Dengar done for the Greater Maldrug hero, and also the Yun model for the Pentastar alignment. So Yun from Jedi or Dark Forces is going to be a hero for them as well. But yeah, so other than those two, like, new content,
Proceeding to
we've always taken the approach that like redone models is stuff that we can do progressively. Like whatever's done is done. We'll prioritize different stuff, and then we'll release that in the versions as they get finished, rather than holding off the entire version for a couple models. So if I hate this map. If this is probably a map that's going to get a lot of changes, if not before release, then
We've located the enemy.
afterward. Oh, it's already gotten a lot of changes.
Yes,
We've
I'll
secured
be
a
there.
build pad.
I understand.
So this already started with us. That's going to have to change as
Choose
well.
your reinforcements.
Adjusting navicomputer.
When a lot of the map editor stuff, it bases faction affiliation at the start
Reinforcements
off of the
en
order of the
route.
faction in the files. So sometimes if that gets changed, some stuff starts with some factions that it
I'm
shouldn't.
with you.
And I think that's what went on
Should be
here.
fun.
But anyways,
D2B
yeah,
over.
so there's stuff like the
D2B,
Secular
copy.
that's getting art
Alright,
updates.
sir.
There's
All
the
weapons loaded.
there's the MC80B, which we'd like to have updated, but
Stay close to
we
me.
may or may not be able to actually finish that before release. So it's that kind of stuff that'll get updated as we go. We've redone a lot of stuff for 2.2, but it's not
On my
quite as
way.
much as we'd like
We've lost a build pad.
overall. But anyways, so the Jedi Heroes and the Jedi units have been
May the force be
pretty
with you.
significantly changed as well since our last one. So they're still really good against infantry, but they tend to be a lot more vulnerable to larger groups of
Be right
enemies
there.
and
Right.
vehicles than they were, especially when we
I
were
copy.
like soloing
Course
everything with Jarek.
Let me help you.
Because before they'd heal for pretty much everything, every bit of damage they took. But now
Got
it's a
it.
bit more reasonable as far as that goes. So they operate about how
Over there,
you'd
you
expect.
got it.
They're really good at getting in, doing a lot of damage, but then you typically want to either get them out of there or have enough support that they can get out of there, or the battle's not going to go well for them. But
Don't
here,
underestimate
they only have a
As
couple
easy as
infantry and a
bullseye
barrack,
womp
so
rats.
Luke should
This
be
should be fun.
good enough to do it. We are going to try to swap out all those VOs that we can. This VO hasn't been a huge priority for the mod ever, but now we do have someone who's
A build pad.
specifically focused on that.
Heading there now.
and so way lawful,
We've
and
lost a build
he's sort
pad.
of
Adjusting navigation.
taken point on that because it's a lot
We've secured a build
more
pad.
difficult tracking everything in the mod and then also trying to work on that
Skywalker
stuff,
here.
which is why it's always been kind of a lower
Commander
priority,
Armor ready.
trying to organize all the potential voice actors, writing all the lines and stuff. But
We've
now we do
lost
have
a
someone
build
whose
pad.
I'll be
job
there.
within the team is to focus on that.
We've got
Uh,
your back.
It allows us to focus on making the rest of the content while that is still being taken care of.
Awaiting your signal.
We've secured
You'll find
a
out full
build
of
pad.
surprises. Your overconfidence
Ready to roll.
is your weakness.
Cannons charged.
Copy. I understand. What's the mission?
Roger
We've
that.
lost a build pad.
Skywalker reporting. I'm on it.
This should be fun.
Understood.
Form up.
So there's a lot of ground balancing in general that we still want to do. I've started on a little bit of it, but only like the first 5%. That's going to be something that I'm working on a bit more over the course of this playthrough.
Computers locked on
So I
target.
don't know how much you'll actually
Awaiting
see,
orders.
but you should start seeing some of the results of it
Advancing.
We've secured a
in
landing zone. We've secured
Empire's End when we get to that, or in the open beta when that starts. So for those of you who didn't actually see that video, I covered it. We did a news post about it a couple weeks ago, but on February 15th on our
Sanitary
forums,
control
we're going to be
achieved.
starting open testing
Building under
for.
construction.
It'll begin by people who have 25 posts or more because we want to start with a smaller testing pool, then work our way up to a larger one. Oh, we can build the New Republic capital because we don't have it on Coruscant yet.
Constructing.
So there's the Senate. That gives us a good income boost. We need to be focusing a little bit on building up this stuff.
Construction complete.
So Leia, you can actually stay there. That's probably fine. But yeah, we have a couple weak planets in here, and it's pretty vulnerable to Imperial attack, especially early on. So the Empire has a couple good core targets, and then Ord Mantell and Kataris that they can take. In the New Republic, you're going to tend to start further down
Control
here.
achieved.
So Sovereign,
Building started.
Bash,
Beginning
there we go.
construction.
Right away, sir. Course plotted.
Let's get.
Tactical battle
Oh
imminent.
boy. Okay, so they're not playing around. So AI hasn't received a huge amount of changes in 2.2 yet, and I don't know that it will receive too many more changes than it has, but they have been changed a little bit, but we'll start getting to more of that as we go through. So
Reinforcements
Donagar
en route.
and Karai.
Order confirmed.
It might be better off.
Fighters.
No, I'm going to try to retreat as little as possible during this playthrough,
Reinforcements en
even if
route.
it makes most tactical sense, just for
Armed and ready.
funsies and
Reinforcements en route.
test the ships a bit more. But anyways, yeah. So there's been some upgrades to all the Mon Calamari models and skins, except for the
There they
MC80B, which is by far the worst, because that one needs a full rework. We're going to be rebuilding it from the ground up when we can, either I will or Dr. Nickers will. And the same goes for the Dreadnought, actually.
Reinforcements
This
en
model
route.
was made in 2006, and it's showing its age a bit. We want to base it off of the Fractal Sponge design, if any of you are familiar with that, when he redid it.
Reporting.
It's a bit more modern looking, and we feel like it'd fit a bit more with the mod's art style if it was done in that style. But we've got a pretty big Imperial Armada here, so this sorry Donagar, we're gonna have to rebuild you.
Yes, sir. Yes, Commander.
This is a pretty decent fleet composition by them. You can see they're all on their different layers. All right.
Ready. All craft attack.
Clearwing squadron reporting.
Cruiser standing by.
Let's see if we can take out Brandi. His heroes do not respawn.
Responding. All craft
Losing power. Picking up signals. The enemy
So one of the other things one of the few things that's still left
enemy fighters
for us to
in range.
do in 2.2 along with the, as far as major projects go, along with the ground balancing pass, is to do a pass on the unit abilities, and there's a few completely new abilities that we've added, like boarding, single unit retreats, that kind of thing, which we will be including on some units, but we also want to go through and assign some of the vanilla abilities to more units, because as it is, there's not a huge amount of abilities on stuff in the game. Thrawn's bonus plus the amount, yeah. We're not going to make it.
En route.
Our engines are down.
I need help.
Our lasers are inoperable.
I need help. That's got him.
We've lost
See if
our
our...
turbo
Eh,
lasers.
come on,
Space
bombers.
station damaged.
But anyways, yeah, so we want to do an ability pass, which means that a bit more power to weapons, power to shields, power to engines should be on some stuff, along with some other base abilities. And then in 2.3 as well, we're going to be working on developing even more of the like completely new abilities, like the single unit retreat one and all that kind of thing. And also some AI updates are going to be coming again in 2.3. But so really the main things that we're working on still before testing, we're finishing off a couple of the GCs, then we're doing the ground pass like I was talking about. A couple map conversions are left, some updates to survival mode. But really, the ability pass, cost pass, there's not a huge amount left for us to do. Well, thanks, Empire.
We have been defeated.
Alright, so we're going to have to concentrate more of our stuff here.
Moving ahead.
Do we have any defensive structures on Coruscant? No, we do
Moving
not.
into position.
Let's
Constructing unit.
Constructing.
let's grab an Empress for Coruscant.
Fall
And I
out.
think we should send
Construction complete.
these guys from a Brigade Array. These are not our patrons.
Let's move out.
Let's see if we can set this up to be able to defend the planet.
Building under construction.
Well, also, let's see what our higher value planets are.
Building under construction.
It's kind of risky to build this. Well, it's not really risky. They're not an expensive thing to replace, but we can do that. Also, Karandra is a pretty good planet for credit income.
Building started.
Let's get some of that going, and then let's also get a
Beginning
trade port
construction.
there. Authoi.
Beginning
Nope.
construction.
Tactical
Trade
battle
port there.
imminent.
Alright, so they're invading. What are they invading with? Not that much. We've changed the Space Force compositions quite a bit, but we haven't done as much with ground AI yet either. So we'll see what we're able to get done in this. So yeah, this is another example of that. I'll see if we can get that changed during the playthrough. That particular bug fixed.
T4B ready.
Let's see if we can grab
I'm here,
more
sir.
of
Can do.
these.
Ready. Right.
Give me a target. T4B mobile.
We've lost a build pad.
So they're landing most of their stuff. I don't know if they're... Is that both? So both? Yeah.
We've secured a build pad.
Oh god.
We've lost a build pad.
Moving into position.
Affirmative.
We've
Got it.
secured a landing zone.
Tank brigade here.
Alright, they're starting to make their way up here.
Right away, sir. Entering battlefield. Underway. Engaging target. Spearheading assault. Almost there.
All right, men. Take cover.
Landing zone.
Within their tactical behaviors, I'm not sure why they currently like to go in different directions. It doesn't make much sense, and that's going to be one of the main things I think we try to change in their behavior.
Right, sir. On our way, sir.
Because it does make it a lot easier the player. All right.
Moving out.
I think we can nuke
Commence
Joris.
assault.
I'll follow your lead.
If it were just the infantry, he'd probably be all right.
Ready for
But-
attack.
You can't take out an entire group of infantry like this and
Will do.
the heavy vehicles.
Run.
We've secured a build pad. Unit destroyed.
Do a bit of damage, but now he's gone.
Providing
All our
backup.
troops. Let's move out.
If he were being supported by his actual ground force here, that would be a lot more problematic.
Attack. We're right behind you.
Fire!
Avoiding fire.
Open fire! Attack that target.
Unit destroyed.
Ready to roll. I copy. Forward.
Unit
Form up.
destroyed.
Attacking target.
Unit destroyed.
We actually don't have as much anti-vehicle as we'd
Unit
probably need for this.
Destroyed. Unit
Waiting
destroyed.
instructions.
Okay, you guys can get down here.
Roger that. For the Alliance.
Unit
Moving out.
destroyed.
Heading out.
Your orders? Almost there. For the Alliance.
Knickers really wants to do the... Dr. Knickers is the name of one of our 3D artists. I'm not just saying underwear. He really wants to redo the New Republic infantry, their main armor set. So that'll probably be something that ends up getting done for
Providing backup.
2.3. He said he'd like to redo it for 2.2 if he can, but he's busy with school and work and stuff at the moment. So it'll have to wait at least a little bit.
Spreading out.
And a lot of this stuff that you're seeing in ground combat as far as unit effectiveness is still going to have to change during the balancing pass that I was talking about.
Ready for
But-
combat. Squad, advance. Yes, sir.
For the rebellion.
Ready for battle.
Right. So even with that,
Enemy
Barracks
bombardment is
destroyed.
ready.
System
I mean, I could have done that much better, but still,
Tactical battle imminent.
technically counts as them winning. So yeah, there's still a lot of AI behavior. There's technically still a lot of AI behavior in that I would have wanted to change for them to use stuff optimally, even though we did lose that. Because a lot of why we lost that was just me not playing properly, and some balancing stuff that would change anyways. But yeah, so I'd like to make the ground stuff stay a bit more as a group, and actually go after your stuff.
The
We've been
enemy has
talking
spotted.
about exactly what we'd want the changes to be in terms of
Choose your reinforcements.
those changes, but
Let's go.
this should be another fairly easy space battle for us. A lot of the early parts of this campaign we're probably going to be trying to consolidate a bit
Heading out.
so that we can
Location confirmed.
Can anyone else see him?
bring together all of our forces.
Ready to command. Weapons charged. Attack that target.
I've been hit.
That's got him.
Weapons operating.
Alright. And so yeah, on the topic of models that are being redone, the Carrack here will probably get redone at some point during Fall of the Republic, which is our Clone Wars mod.
Our target priority is
And as 2.2 starts coming to a close, you're probably going to see a lot more Fall of the Republic stuff come up on the channel as well. I don't know if we'll have a full playthrough anytime soon, but just you'll start seeing a bit more news about it, a bit more content from it.
on those laser cannons.
Maybe start off with like a skirmish match or something. But yeah, so Carrack, Dreadnought, and then also these frigate shipyards, or all the shipyards really, have been pretty high on my priority list to redo for years, but we just never did it. And, like, we actually did do it for Ascendancy, but we just never even ported those back into Empire at War. Which we really should have done. Is we made the assets, we just never used them. At least for the for the smaller shipyard and the capital shipyard. I just don't know how well the capital shipyard from Ascendancy would actually work in ICW, because it's 2 rings and stuff gets built between them, but for the most part it looked like you're shooting at nothing because it's just 2 dry dock rings really. So anyways,
Underway.
En route.
let's consolidate some more of these ground
Adjusting
forces.
Navicomputer. Course plotted.
Coruscant, can we build more mines here, or are you already mined out? Well, first let's get that for sure,
Construction complete.
and then let's get
Building started.
heavy vehicle factory.
Vehicle in production.
So we're going to try to bring a lot of stuff out from Coruscant. What's this map? Okay, so this is the farm map. We do have
Invasion
a couple V-Wings,
commencing.
so should be okay. There were some health changes on ground without changing any of the damage values.
Right away.
Choose your reinforcements.
Moving
So
to
the first
course.
thing I'm going to focus on is changing the
Copy.
damage values for
Moving
everything,
ahead.
and then we'll work on the health values
Heading
after
out,
that.
sir.
So we'll balance the damage we want them, the
Standing
damage
by.
types
Ready
especially,
to go.
and
Scouting
we'll
location.
go from there. Now let's do some scouting with these V-Wings.
Executing flyby.
Air stuff tends
Copy.
to be a bit more fragile
En route.
than it
Moving
was in
to
previous
coordinates.
builds, especially
Roger
because
that.
they're vulnerable to fire from more
Right
types of
away.
things. So it's not the
Moving
same
out.
situation where it was like,
Getting out.
if you have
All out.
AA,
Let's move
air
out.
units are no problem. If you don't have
Let's
AA,
go.
air units
Keep going.
are
This
going to
way.
kill you. Because that's one of the things I've
Over
always
there.
disliked
Enemy
about
unit sighted.
Destroyed.
air units in the AW,
Scouting
is that it's so
location.
binary.
Executing
Alright, so we gotta
flyby.
be...
We're going in. Copy. En route. Moving to
They're really good for scouting. They have some decent
Roger that.
firepower with stuff like V-Wings and Air
Right away.
Strikers. But they're not
moving out.
really... It's not really as valid a strategy to just spam them and guarantee a win. I just kind of...
Heading out. Ball out.
So they have some artillery
Let's
there.
move out. Let's go. Keep going. This way. I copy. Commander,
Choose your reinforcements. Reinforcements en route.
reporting.
All right, men, take cover.
Yes, sir.
Forward.
Let's go.
We're right behind you. Ready, sir.
There we go.
Over there, guarding the rear. Ready for orders.
Let's keep the V-Wings back here.
I got
Get everyone else
Keep
to
going.
head up to this one.
Roger that.
So we'll have the V-Wings able to respond if we need them, but not running in to get blown up. Like I had them up there.
This way. I'll follow your lead.
Yes, Commander. Fall out, troops.
So hopefully there's
Move
one
out.
from each
Let's go.
squad. But okay, you guys can
Keep going.
speed it up a little bit.
Roger that. Form up.
Let's build a sensor node, and that can help remind me if I actually nerfed them the way I wanted to.
Ready. This way.
We've secured a landing zone.
Sensor node.
Yes, sir.
Alright, so we know there's turbo lasers there and there.
Bombing
Turbo
run
lasers there for
available.
sure, and that's the rest of the base in there. So what we really need to find...
Construction complete.
Okay, yeah, so
Yes, Commander.
this is a bigger map, but it looks like the stuff has been changed how I
Choose your
wanted it to be.
reinforcements.
Adjusting Navicomputer.
On our way.
Right away.
Maximum unit
So this is
capacity.
probably closer to what the center node is going to be. It's still a significant amount of information, but it's not the entire map anymore.
We'll assist you.
On some really small maps, it'll be most of the map still, but...
Waiting orders. Attack that target.
Acknowledge.
Attacking target. Ready.
Unit
Target.
destroyed.
Firing.
Reporting. Right away. We can cover you.
Move it out.
Providing backup.
Entering battle. I'll follow your lead.
Take cover.
Copy.
I want to increase the range on some of these plug troopers as well. They can attack from
Give me
a
the
bit
target.
further.
Engaging target.
I mean, that It was probably the most redundant thing I could say.
Ready.
Commence assault.
Just because you're slightly farther away doesn't mean you're getting out of this.
T4P mobile. Moving into position. Right away, sir.
I guess we also have to decide whether we want the missile, the rockets, or the lasers to be AV/AA for the T4Bs, because it's not super intuitive, or it's not super clear either way. I also haven't read up on as much yet. Same thing with the AAC, because we're not 100% sure on that, and
Attack.
you end up with these like halfway decent for both situations.
Open fire. Squad advance.
But we want to get vehicles a lot more specialized than they are.
Underway. We're right behind you. Almost there. Ready to
Yes,
assist.
Let's
Commander.
get you guys over
Bombardment
here.
available.
So what I'm really looking for
Form up. Scouting location. Executing flyby.
is where
Copy.
their power gen is.
En route.
I don't
Moving to
know
coordinates.
if they have another set of turbo lasers. I'm assuming they do in there.
Roger that.
Do they?
Right away.
No, not there.
Moving out. Heading
Oh, there
out.
we go. Well, I
Fly
guess
wing
the
standing by.
Bombardment cancelled.
Let's move out.
we updated
Target's
the
locked.
other
Let's go.
bombardments to not be the giant
Waiting orders.
random messes
my
they were,
prospector.
and they were supposed to be a lot more centralized. But I guess we skipped over the New Republics when we did that.
Copy that.
All right, so turbo lasers are down.
Keep going.
We can run
We've
in
got
the
your
main
back.
base here, and we'll try out the bombardment
This
to
way.
see what still needs to be done there.
Ground target locked.
We're
Over
right
there.
with you.
Get out of there. We want you alive after this.
Ready. Fall out, troops. T2B over. Let's move out.
Unit
Attack that
destroyed.
target. Attacking target. Fire at will. Roger. Attacking. Will do.
So kind of like with space, one of our goals is to
For the rebellion.
make the ground combat a little bit slower so that it's more possible to actually do stuff instead of just
T2B,
watching stuff
copy.
immediately
Let's
explode.
go.
And we're not quite there yet,
Keep going.
so
This way. Over there. On
what you
it.
see right now, stuff does
Course
have
plotted.
a bit more. I think it's like a 1 point. We have the modifier. There's a modifier in game constants which sets
Advancing.
ground in. There you can change all of ground and space health values at one thing.
Unit
Right away.
So we have them at
Form
Uh,
Unit
Firing.
a little bit higher than they were, but not quite high enough, I don't think. All right, let's see how we do with that.
Entering battlefield.
Okay, that is
I copy.
super
Scouting
OP.
location.
So we'll need to change
choose for
that.
reinforcements.
Heading out, sir.
On our way, sir.
At
Right away.
maximum unit capacity.
Ready for attack.
Want to have more of a chance to actually respond to stuff happening,
Executing flyby.
and
I copy.
also have some
Weapons ready.
different roles within what stuff does, like I was saying.
We've
But anyways,
secured
we'll cover that a bit more as we go through. Maybe I'll be able to include
Hiding back.
some of the changes in the playthrough. The only difficulty with doing these playthroughs while we're
Yes,
developing
sir.
stuff
En route.
is
We've lost
obviously not everything's done,
Got a
and
lock.
then as stuff changes,
Attack.
you can't always continue using the same save with updated stuff because the saves will start crashing. So we got to be a bit careful making sure that doesn't happen. So I'm going to try to update it as much as I can as we go through. And I'll probably pick and choose updates more than anything rather than going with like grabbing everything because that's more likely to crash. I'll just pick whatever stuff seems safest. And then hope, because we're going to be starting another one fairly soon anyways, but I want to kind of show or be able to show stuff as it happens.
Fire at will.
I've got my approach vector.
unit
Roger
destroyed.
that. Copy that. Right away. Back up here.
We've secured a build
Moving out.
pad.
Providing cover. Attacking. Fall out. Let's move out. Targeting.
Reporting. Over here.
Yes.
We've lost a
Waiting
build
order.
pad.
Engaging target. Forward.
All right. so we're making some progress in the base here.
Spread out, men.
We've secured
Is it just
a
this
build
little
pad.
section over here? I
We've
think so.
lost a build pad.
Let's go. Firing.
Unit destroyed. Unit destroyed.
So I think the AV projectiles are still way too strong.
Yes, Commander. Ready.
We can easily replace.
We're going
Destroyed.
in.
Suppressive fire.
Reporting in. Ground target locked.
There we go.
Ready for attack.
Destroyed.
Avoiding fire.
You can easily replace the infantry, but
Initiating wave attack.
which is another thing I don't like saying. That's another thing we'd like to change with the balancing is try to make it feel like the ground units are a bit more valuable to keep alive, because they are significantly cheaper than space units. We probably want to keep that to some extent, but
A build pad.
we do want it to feel like you're actually losing something if you lose a ground unit. And the way the game's economy balances out now
System
does tend to feel a bit
control
better,
achieved.
because you're paying for some extra stuff. And there's one
Construction complete.
Building under construction.
negative economic metric that we want to put in, which we
Building under
haven't
construction.
quite yet. So we'll talk about that when it happens as well. But let's get
Construction
Anzac
complete.
Fist, let's get
Constructing
Thunderchild,
unit.
Pilot
Construction
Express,
In
complete.
production.
Beehive, Party Starter. There were some other of the patron ships that I spread throughout the galaxy when we started, but I'm just not sure exactly where they are. They'll start turning up more as we go. I think these are just normal. But I think this fleet over here at Denon probably has a fair few. So yeah, you can see we have the Dodacy, Starlight Eclipsed, Rebel Star, Gladius. I think there were a few in the Sluivan fleet, weren't there? No, not those guys. Oh, there's Loki's Throne, who was a raider in the last one. Raider. Alright, so we have Pakrik. We have to take Merkur. We're going to try to go for that next.
Construction complete.
But I think... yeah, we'll do that. We'll go for the space battle there now. And then next episode, we'll start our mission for the Katana fleet overall.
Construction
Nope.
complete.
Easier than the
Construction
pencil.
complete.
And we'll also try to go for a Raidu at that point, too. Let's see what the history is. They're actually growing a fair bit for military. Their economy jumped up quite a bit there. I don't know what they just made all those extra credits off of.
Construction
Probably just a
complete.
mana drop. We do want to work on some of that a
Construction
bit,
complete.
changing what they get for free or not free.
Order confirmed.
But let's grab
Vehicle in production.
some more of these guys.
Construction complete.
Dolomar, let's grab some of you.
Constructing.
And one of the things we do have to work out with the
Tactical battle
economy
imminent.
is how it scales between bigger and smaller galactic conquests. So, stuff with like the upkeep, it may end up working like really well, restricting your growth on large GCs but not small GCs, and vice versa. And that's something that we have to keep an eye on as we go, because the mod does scale between like 20 planets to 120 planets for different
Choose
maps.
your reinforcements.
And really, you don't have to worry too much about snowballing out of control on the
Let's get out of here.
on the really small
Come on,
maps,
Chewie.
because they are like you're probably gonna end fairly quickly. Anyways, and the
Alright,
point is
Chewie,
for them to
let's get
end
outta here.
fairly quickly. But for larger
Check it
maps,
out.
it's more of a concern, and then we want that to scale up fairly
All right.
smoothly as we go. But let's get a bit out of the way of this
We
raid
got 'em.
fleet.
Send reinforcements.
You owe me.
We can probably wipe them out before the raid fleet gets here.
Taking
So
out
let's
the bad
send who in there. Wasn't Lando in this fleet before? Did we lose Lando and I just didn't even notice?
Moving to coordinates. Vectors set.
Reinforcements en route.
All right, we can send Corin Star and Home One over here.
Stay in attack formation.
I am with you. Beware of traps.
Oh, there's a raid fleet.
I'm in range. I've got my approach vector.
Okay, Monfurious in there. If we can deal with them before anything happens, Rebellious Spirit. I think this is our only MC40.
What do you suggest?
MC40 Patron,
Ready?
rather.
Readying weapons.
Reinforcements en route.
Underway. Moving into position.
Okay, looks like we're probably gonna have to turn around
Coordinates
and deal with them.
Choose your reinforcements.
Let's keep Spartan's Pride and Thermopylae
What's up? Considering
in reserve.
At the ready.
I'm gonna start finishing my
Course.
at some point.
Squadron reporting.
take it easy.
All right, their fighters are coming up fairly far ahead, which is
Back me up here, Chewie.
not good for them.
Got them on the run.
That's got him.
Reporting
It
in.
would be nice to just disable retreat for even longer during these battles, the raid battles, so that the raiders can just win. And we'd probably wait to do that until there can be an effect from that afterwards. So that'll be something that we probably work on with 2.3 or maybe even 2.4. But anyways, that's going to do it for today's episode. In the next episode, we're going to grab Merker, and we're going to do the Katana mission most likely, because we already made it to Packrick Minor, and we have everything brought together here. Well, we'll probably have to take Corellia before we can do that. But we're probably not going to hold Merker. We're going to grab it so we can get Talon Card. We'll move back here, and we're going to start working from our way south up. So I hope you're enjoying the playthrough so far. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. I do respond to everything I can. I read everything, and then I try to respond to as much as I can, and then if something seems like a common question, I try to bring it up in the videos. But yeah, so like I said earlier, the testing is starting in about a month, so if you're interested in that, you can go to thrawnrevenge.com and register on the forums to get into the beta, or to join the process to get into the beta. And also, if you would like to join our Patron fleet, there's a link for that in the description as well. So thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time. Bye.